I think the most meaningful writing I've done at Brown was when I was taking history of the 1990s, and I had to write a paper. It was our final project, and it was any argumentative paper on some trend in the 90s that you think is important. And I decided to write about the history and the rise of Fox News. It came out in 1996, and I chose that topic because I grew up in a conservative town in the South where everyone watched Fox News, and then moving up north in Providence, everyone usually watched CNN or MSNBC. Like, you could go to Providence Place Mall, and on the big screen in the food court, you would see CNN. It's like, whoa, I would never see that in Texas.
Most meaningful writing at Brown is a piece that I wrote some weeks ago when I was reflecting on my experience being here. I decided to actually get out of my apartment and go sit on the main green, and I wrote a little bit, but then there were dogs and I'm scared of dogs. So I went to another area that was more quiet and more secluded, and I just wrote about thinking about the last time I checked in with myself, which was about a year before, because I looked at my journal entry and it was exactly a year before, and I was this is the first time that I've actually asked myself how I was feeling, and just reflecting on my attitude and my motivations my first year, looking at my first pieces and thinking about all the excitement that I had being here.
Writing to me means writing computer code, programming, and solving problems. In another sense, writing also means to me to for example, explain something using words and do some theoretical analysis, proof.
I'm taking a history class, a 150 section called Locked Up, which is a global history of prison and captivity. Basically, there are 11 weeks of material that span kind of a chronological order, and out of the 11 you can write 5 short essays. Initially, when I first started writing the first of the 5 essays in the beginning of the semester, I thought it wasn't going to be that challenging, and I found that it was very difficult to make a concise response, especially in 2 pages double-spaced, which is really kind of nothing. So I actually went and talked with my TA after the first 2 essays because I was confused at a lot of his critiques of my essays. Even though my TA did give some comments, it wasn't helpful enough, and even until the last essay, I did feel kind of lost, and I haven't gotten that one back yet.
I talked about how and if private prisons are a failure of the libertarian philosophy. I was people are making money off of the harm to other people, and that was just really interesting to find out more about a topic I've always been really interested in but had never researched, and seeing that maybe private prisons aren't so libertarian after all, and in fact the government has a lot to do with them, and maybe that's who we should be blaming for this terrible system.
My writing mainly is actually lab reports and other types of long assignments like that. The meaningfulness in lab reports is kind of bringing everything that you learn in the classroom together for doing something hands-on in the lab.
The writing I've done for my philosophy classes has been really meaningful because my concentration right now is philosophy, and it's meaningful to me because I haven't really been doing too well grade-wise on them because they point out a lot of errors I have, and while it doesn't feel good, it's really meaningful for me because my plan eventually is to become a philosophy professor, and knowing how to write and knowing how to write specifically within philosophy is a really helpful skill, and for that their criticisms for me and telling me what I'm doing wrong is really helping me.
I found this class called Cave Writing. It was called Cave Writing at the time of my second semester, which is this weird sort of peripheral class on campus in what's called the Cave, which is this virtual reality space. And you go into it, and there's big walls all around you, and you can have 3D objects all around. So they use it for science simulations and landscape of Mars, hard science stuff. And there's this tiny little group of creative writers that have classes in that space. And so I had this class with coders and musicians and RISD students and people like me who didn't know what was going on. it was a totally different way of approaching writing from the ground up, you know, and seeing writing in 3 dimensions, because they're objects in space that you sort of stand in there with. It, from the very beginning of my time at Brown, made me think about writing in a totally different way.
Meaningful writing to me means something that I think I can put into words, something that has been on my mind. So for me, writing about my identities as a first-gen, low-income college student, and writing about what I want to do in the future.
I've done a handful of English classes over here. I was going to concentrate in English when I first came to Brown, but I personally found that the writing that is required of us in English classes is not as in-depth or meaningful, as you say, as I'd expected it to be. I did prefer my experience at the Brown Daily Herald to the ones in my English classes. It was a lot more kind of involved with the campus community, and I felt like I was actually writing something that was important and would probably be read. I'm not sure it's the Brown Daily Herald. So I did prefer that.
I think the most meaningful experience I've had writing was last semester. I read a paper for a class I was in that was it was an engaged scholars course, so we had to do like off-campus service as part of the course. It was very much incorporated into the content of the course. And the final assignment was to essentially, it was pretty open-ended, but it was essentially to like write about what our main sort of takeaways were from the class, because I think that everyone sort of had very strong sort of like experienced like a lot of change as they went through the course and like reflected critically about their service and what they're doing. I also felt like the final was like something that was beneficial to me. Instead of just proving that I like was there throughout the course, it was more like showing like what I've gained from that course.
I took a class my freshman year, which was History of American Intervention, and I wrote a big paper about how Israel got started. It was kind of cool because it sort of framed a lot of things that have been really personal to me in like a way more like factual way, and I got to like actually learn about something that sort of felt but hadn't really known much about.
At Brown, I've had the opportunity to join this class where we get to do video essays, and we have to make the essay first, and we make a video component to it. And the topic was open to do anything so long as you can write and make a video about it. And I chose a very personal narrative about love and dependence and everything in between. And it's very close to my heart, that essay. It's due tomorrow, actually.